The champagne glass shattered against the marble floor, and everyone in the restaurant turned to stare. Victoria Ashford stood there, her designer dress spotless, her face twisted in disgust as she looked down at the elderly woman who had accidentally bumped into her at the entrance. "Watch where you're going, you filthy creature," Victoria hissed, her voice dripping with venom. The old woman, dressed in tattered clothes with a walking stick clutched in her weathered hands, stumbled backward. Her eyes, however, remained steady and calm. "I apologize, miss. I didn't mean to." "I don't care what you meant," Victoria cut her off sharply. "Look at you. You probably haven't bathed in weeks. How did security even let something like you near this establishment?" She turned to the restaurant manager, who had rushed over. "Get this beggar out of here before she drives away your actual customers." The old woman's lips pressed into a thin line. She slowly straightened her back, and for a moment, something flickered in her dark eyes. Something ancient. Something powerful. "You should be careful, young woman," the old woman said quietly. "Cruelty has a way of finding its way back to those who spread it." Victoria laughed, a sharp, cutting sound that made several diners wince. "Is that supposed to be a threat? What are you going to do? Curse me?" She turned to her friends who had gathered behind her, all dressed in expensive clothes and dripping with jewelry. "Did you hear that? The homeless woman is going to curse me." Her friends giggled nervously, but Victoria wasn't done. She stepped closer to the old woman, her heels clicking against the floor. "Let me tell you something, you pathetic waste of space. I have everything: money, beauty, power. And you have nothing. You are nothing. The world would be better off if people like you just disappeared." The old woman's expression didn't change, but her fingers tightened around her walking stick. When she spoke again, her voice carried a weight that seemed to fill the entire room. "You mock what you don't understand. You spit on kindness and glorify your own importance. Very well, Victoria Ashford. Since you believe yourself untouchable, let me show you how quickly everything can crumble." "Oh, please," Victoria rolled her eyes. "Go peddle your superstitious nonsense somewhere else." The old woman raised her walking stick and pointed it directly at Victoria's chest. "Before 7 days pass, you will lose everything that makes you feel superior. Your beauty will fade. Your wealth will vanish. Your friends will abandon you. And you will know what it means to be truly alone, truly desperate, truly nothing. Only when you understand the weight of your cruelty will you have any hope of redemption." A strange chill swept through the restaurant despite the warm evening air. Several people shivered. Victoria felt goosebumps rise on her arms, but she forced herself to laugh again. "You're insane. Someone call the police and have this lunatic removed." The old woman turned and walked toward the exit, her movements suddenly graceful despite her apparent age. At the doorway, she paused and looked back one final time. 7 days, Victoria. 7 days to learn humility, or spend eternity in the darkness you've created. Then she was gone, disappearing into the evening streets like smoke dissolving into air. Victoria's friends crowded around her, their voices overlapping. "Oh my God, Victoria, that was so creepy. What a psycho. Are you okay? Did you see the way she looked at you? I got chills." Victoria waved them off dismissively, though her hand trembled slightly. "It's nothing. Just some delusional old woman trying to feel important. Come on, let's go inside. I need another drink." But as they walked into the restaurant, Victoria couldn't shake the feeling that something had fundamentally changed. The air felt different, heavier. She glanced back at the entrance, half expecting to see the old woman still standing there, but the doorway was empty. That night, Victoria couldn't sleep. She tossed and turned in her penthouse apartment, her silk sheets tangling around her legs. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the old woman's face, heard those words echoing in her mind. 7 days. It was ridiculous. Curses weren't real. Magic wasn't real. But around 3 in the morning, Victoria noticed something strange. Her left hand itched terribly. She turned on the bedside lamp and held her hand up to the light. There, on her palm, was a mark she'd never seen before. It looked like a symbol, dark and intricate, as if it had been burned into her skin. Her heart began to race. She ran to the bathroom and scrubbed the mark with soap and water, then with makeup remover, then with rubbing alcohol. Nothing worked. The symbol remained, stark and undeniable against her pale skin. "This is insane," she whispered to her reflection. "This isn't happening." But it was happening. And as Victoria stared at the mark on her palm, she felt the first real flutter of fear in her chest. She tried to remember exactly what the old woman had said. 7 days. Everything would crumble. Beauty, wealth, friends. All of it gone. Victoria climbed back into bed, but sleep didn't come. She lay there in the darkness, her marked hand clenched into a fist, trying to convince herself that tomorrow everything would be normal. The mark would fade. Life would continue as it always had. She was wrong. The next morning started normally enough. Victoria's alarm went off at 7, and she dragged herself out of bed, still exhausted from her sleepless night. She avoided looking at her left hand as she went through her morning routine. Maybe if she ignored it, the mark would just disappear. She was wrong about that too. Victoria was brushing her teeth when she noticed something odd in the mirror. She leaned closer, her toothbrush falling from her hand and clattering into the sink. There, at her hairline near her right temple, was a streak of gray. Not blonde, not light brown. Gray. Like an old woman's hair. "No," she breathed, touching the streak with trembling fingers. No, no, no. She was only 28 years old. This couldn't be happening. Victoria immediately reached for her phone and called her private salon, demanding an emergency appointment. They could fit her in at 10. But by the time she arrived at the salon 2 hours later, the gray streak had spread. Now it stretched from her temple back toward her ear, a visible line of aging that made her look years older. "Ms. Ashford," her stylist Marcus said carefully as she settled into the chair. "What happened to your hair?" "I don't know," Victoria snapped. "That's why I'm here." "Dye it. Cover it. Fix it." Marcus worked on her hair for over an hour, applying the most expensive dye they had. But when he rinsed it out, Victoria stared at her reflection in horror. The gray was still there, exactly as visible as before. If anything, it looked even more prominent now. "I don't understand," Marcus stammered. "The dye should have worked. It always works. I've never seen anything like this." Victoria didn't pay, didn't tip, didn't even respond. She just grabbed her purse and ran out of the salon, ignoring Marcus calling after her about the bill. She drove home recklessly, her hands shaking on the steering wheel. When she glanced down at a red light, she saw the mark on her palm seemed darker, more defined. Day 2 brought worse news. Victoria woke to find more gray in her hair, and when she looked in the mirror, she noticed fine lines around her eyes that definitely hadn't been there before. Her skin looked duller, less radiant. She called in sick to work, something she never did, and spent the day trying every beauty treatment she could think of. Face masks, serums, expensive creams that cost hundreds of dollars per ounce. Nothing helped. But the real nightmare came that evening when she checked her bank account. Victoria stared at her phone screen, certain there must be a mistake. Her checking account, which had held over $50,000 yesterday, now showed a balance of $12,000. She immediately called her bank. "Ms. Ashford," the bank representative said after pulling up her account. "I see several large transactions processed yesterday evening and this morning." "What transactions?" "I didn't authorize anything." "There's a payment to the IRS for back taxes, $20,000. A charge from your investment firm for fees, $10,000. And several automatic payments that came through for your car, your apartment, and various subscriptions." "Is there a problem?" "Yes, there's a problem," Victoria shouted into the phone. "I don't owe back taxes. My investments don't have those kinds of fees. This is wrong. I can open an investigation, but that typically takes 7 to 10 business days." Victoria hung up. 7 to 10 days. She didn't have 7 to 10 days. She had 5 days left, according to the old woman's curse. Day 3 was worse. Victoria's reflection showed a woman who looked 40 instead of 28. The gray had spread through half her hair. Deep wrinkles lined her forehead and bracketed her mouth. Her skin had lost its glow entirely, looking sallow and tired. Dark circles hung under her eyes no matter how much concealer she applied. Her phone rang constantly that morning. Her credit card companies, all 3 of them, calling about late payments. Her landlord, asking about rent that should have auto-paid but hadn't. Her car dealership, saying her lease payment had bounced. "This isn't possible," Victoria said to herself over and over. This isn't real. But it was real, and it was getting worse. She tried calling her friends, the ones who had been with her at the restaurant. Sarah answered on the fourth ring. Sarah, thank God, Victoria said. I need to talk to someone. Something terrible is happening and I don't. Victoria, I can't really talk right now, Sarah interrupted. Her voice was cold, distant. I'm actually pretty busy, but I need help. My accounts are all messed up and I look terrible and... Look, Victoria, I've been thinking. Maybe we need some space. You've always been kind of intense, you know? And after what you said to that old woman the other night, I don't know if I want to be associated with that kind of behavior. Victoria's blood ran cold. What are you talking about? You laughed. You all laughed. Yeah, well, I've had time to think about it. It was really cruel, Victoria. She was just an old woman who bumped into you accidentally. You didn't have to humiliate her like that. Anyway, I have to go. The line went dead. Victoria tried calling her other friends. Michael didn't answer. Jessica sent the calls straight to voicemail. David texted back saying he didn't want drama in his life right now. Within an hour, she realized the truth. They were all abandoning her. Every single person she'd considered a friend was cutting her off. Day 4 arrived with a vengeance. Victoria barely recognized the woman staring back at her from the mirror. She looked 60 years old. Her hair was almost entirely gray, her face a map of wrinkles and age spots. Her hands, once smooth and elegant, were gnarled and spotted. The mark on her palm had grown darker still, pulsing with a faint warmth. Her phone rang early that morning. It was her boss. Victoria, we need to talk, he said, his voice tight with anger. I just got off the phone with the Henderson account. They're pulling their business. Do you know why? Victoria's stomach dropped. The Henderson account was worth millions. It was her biggest client, the one that had earned her a promotion last year. What? No, why would they? Because apparently you sent an incredibly insulting email to Mrs. Henderson yesterday afternoon. You called her ideas pedestrian and said her company was a waste of your valuable time. What were you thinking? I didn't send any email, Victoria protested, but even as she said it, she knew it was useless. I swear, I would never. I have the email right here, Victoria. It came from your company account. We're letting you go, effective immediately. Someone from HR will call you later about your final paycheck and benefits. I'm sorry, but we can't have this kind of behavior representing our firm. He hung up before she could respond. Victoria sat on her couch in her expensive apartment, wearing her designer pajamas, looking like an old woman, and realized she'd just lost her job. The job that paid for this apartment, this lifestyle, everything. Her savings account was nearly empty now. $900 left. Her credit cards were maxed out for mysterious charges she hadn't made. Her investment portfolio, when she checked it online, had somehow tanked. Everything she'd put money into had crashed overnight. Victoria tried to leave her apartment to clear her head, but when she got to the lobby, the doorman stopped her. Excuse me, ma'am, he said politely. Can I help you? I live here, James, Victoria said irritably. Penthouse B. You see me every day. James looked confused. I'm sorry, but I don't recognize you. Could I see some identification? Victoria stared at him in disbelief. James had been the doorman for 3 years. They'd chatted hundreds of times. But when she looked in the reflective surface of the lobby's decorative mirror, she understood. She didn't look like Victoria Ashford anymore. She looked like a completely different person. An old, tired, poor person. She showed him her ID, and his eyes went wide. Ms. Ashford? I'm so sorry I didn't. Are you feeling all right? Should I call someone? Just let me out, Victoria muttered, pushing past him. She walked the streets for hours, trying to think, trying to find a solution. But everywhere she went, people avoided her. They stepped around her on the sidewalk, held their purses closer, wouldn't meet her eyes. She'd become invisible. Worse than invisible. She'd become exactly what she'd accused the old woman of being. Nothing. That evening, Victoria returned to her apartment to find an eviction notice taped to her door. 30 days to vacate due to non-payment of rent. She crumpled the notice in her fist and went inside, sinking onto her couch. The designer furniture that had once made her so proud now felt like it belonged to someone else. None of this felt real. Day 5 brought desperation. Victoria woke up on her couch, having fallen asleep there in her clothes. Her phone was dead. When she plugged it in and turned it on, she found her service had been disconnected. No payment. She was completely cut off now. She counted the cash in her wallet. $63. That was all she had left in the world. Her car had been repossessed in the night, towed away while she slept. Her credit cards were useless. Her bank accounts were frozen due to the investigations she'd requested. Victoria walked to the nearest coffee shop, planning to use their Wi-Fi to figure out what to do next. But when she tried to order a small coffee, the barista looked at her with barely concealed disgust. "That'll be $4.50, he said curtly. Victoria handed over a $5 bill with shaking hands. The barista didn't say thank you, didn't smile, didn't acknowledge her as human. He just shoved the change across the counter and moved to the next customer. She found a table in the corner and tried to blend in, but other customers kept glancing at her with discomfort. An old woman, alone, looking homeless. After an hour, the manager came over. "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but if you're not going to order anything else, I need to ask you to leave. You're taking up space that paying customers need." "I bought a coffee," Victoria said weakly. "An hour ago. Please, don't make this difficult." Victoria left, the half-finished coffee still sitting on the table. She had nowhere to go. Her apartment would be locked in 3 weeks if she couldn't pay. She had no job, no friends, no family who would speak to her. She'd always been too busy for family, too focused on her career and social life to maintain those relationships. For the first time in her life, Victoria Ashford understood what it meant to be truly alone. Day 6 was the longest day of Victoria's life. She spent it sitting on a bench in the park, watching people pass by, feeling invisible. Her stomach growled with hunger. She'd used most of her remaining cash on a cheap meal yesterday, and now she had $27 left. As evening approached, a young couple walked past her bench. The woman carried shopping bags from expensive stores, laughing at something her boyfriend said. Victoria watched them, remembering when that had been her life just a week ago. "Excuse me," Victoria called out softly. The couple stopped and looked at her warily. "I'm sorry to bother you. I'm having a really difficult time right now. Could you spare any change? I just need enough for a meal." The woman's face twisted in disgust. "Get a job," she snapped, pulling her boyfriend away. "Come on, let's go. I hate it when they beg." Victoria felt tears sting her eyes. That could have been her, saying those exact words. That had been her just a week ago. She'd said worse to the old woman. So much worse. As darkness fell, Victoria found herself walking through the streets aimlessly. She passed the restaurant where everything had started, and on impulse, she went inside. The same manager was working. "Excuse me," Victoria said quietly. "A week ago, there was an incident here. An old woman. I was very rude to her. Do you remember?" The manager's eyes narrowed. "I remember. That was disgraceful behavior. We almost banned the entire party. Do you know anything about her? Where she went? Who she was?" "Why would I know that? She was just some homeless woman who wandered in. We don't track people like that." His tone dripped with contempt. "For the homeless woman, then." "For Victoria now." Victoria left without another word. She walked for another hour until she found herself in a part of the city she'd never visited before. The buildings were older here, the streets less clean. And there, sitting on the steps of an abandoned church, was the old woman. Victoria's heart began to pound. The woman looked exactly the same as a week ago. Same tattered clothes, same walking stick. But her eyes, when they met Victoria's, held no surprise. 7 days, the old woman said simply. "You've learned what it means to have nothing. To be nothing, in the eyes of those who value only surfaces." Victoria fell to her knees on the cold concrete. "Please," she whispered. "Please, I'm sorry. I was cruel and horrible and wrong. I understand now. I understand everything. Please take it back. Please undo this." The old woman tilted her head. "Do you? Do you truly understand?" "Yes," Victoria sobbed. "I've lost everything. My beauty, my money, my friends, my job, all of it. I'm alone and scared, and I don't know what to do. I've never felt this helpless in my entire life. And what have you learned from this helplessness?" Victoria looked up, tears streaming down her aged face. That I was wrong. That I was so wrong about everything. Money and beauty and status, none of it matters. None of it's real. What's real is how you treat people. What's real is kindness and compassion and seeing everyone as human, not just the ones who can do something for you. The old woman was quiet for a long moment. And if I were to reverse this curse, to give you back everything you've lost, what would you do differently? Everything, Victoria said immediately. I would do everything differently. I would treat people with respect. I would use my money to help others instead of just buying things to make myself feel superior. I would be grateful for what I have instead of using it as a weapon against those who have less. She looked down at her gnarled hands. I would never, ever mock someone for being poor or old or different from me. The old woman stood, her movements graceful despite her apparent age. She walked down the steps until she stood directly in front of Victoria. Your words are pretty, but words are easy when you're desperate. How do I know you mean them? Victoria met her eyes, and in them she saw something vast and ancient and terrifying. This was no ordinary homeless woman. This was something else entirely. Something powerful beyond comprehension. You don't, Victoria admitted. You can't know if I mean them. You can only give me the chance to prove it. She held out her marked palm. I'm not asking you to erase what happened. I'm asking for the opportunity to be better. To do better. I'll carry this mark forever, if that's what it takes. Just please, give me the chance to make amends. The old woman studied her for what felt like an eternity. Then slowly she smiled. It transformed her face, making her look both ancient and ageless. You have learned humility, Victoria Ashford. That is more than I expected, if I'm honest. She reached out and touched the mark on Victoria's palm. Your beauty will return. Your wealth will restore itself. But it will happen gradually over time as you prove through your actions that you've truly changed. And this mark. She pressed her finger into Victoria's palm. This will remain. A reminder of who you were and who you've chosen to become. Warmth flooded through Victoria's body, starting from her palm and spreading outward. She felt something shift, something fundamental change inside her. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you so much. When she looked up, the old woman was gone, vanished as mysteriously as she'd appeared. Victoria sat there on the church steps for a long time, looking at the mark on her palm. Then she stood and started walking. She had $27 in her pocket and nowhere to sleep tonight. But tomorrow, she would start rebuilding. Not the life she'd had before, but something better. Something real. If you've made it this far, thank you for watching. This story is a reminder that how we treat others matters, especially those who seem to have less than us. Have you ever witnessed someone being cruel to another person? How did it make you feel? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more thought-provoking content. Until next time, remember, kindness costs nothing, but its value is immeasurable.